Hello fellow humans and welcome to another episode of your replays. And how do you enter your replays? Join my Discord server, link to that in the description. And if you don't want to enter your replays, join anyway, it's a great place. So basically put it in the clips channel and you might get featured. Obviously I don't do a lot of these, so make sure it's a good one. And it is definitely a good one here that we start with from Cow Says Moo in the IS-7. Now, how do you carry a game that is sort of the thing today? Because sometimes you have a very bad team, and the easiest way to carry is to have a lot of luck. Now, most of the 7, 8k, 9k damage battles that you see involve some kind of luck. There is no way around it. Obviously, a tremendous amount of skill as well, no doubt about that. However, a lot of it is luck. You're not going to get that kind of damage without being somewhat lucky. And unlucky is that Object 907 who just stands out in the open with his rear and gets subsequently finished off very nicely. Now, the IS-7 is a very average vehicle, essentially, as in there's nothing special about it. However, it is, once you know how it works, it is a tank that is definitely going to work quite well for you, especially if the enemy is very incompetent, because the army on the IS-7 is very strong. Now, there's a VK over there. There's more tanks. There's a 4005 camping in the back. As you can see by the 410 alpha damage, you know what it is. And if you know those kind of things, then the game becomes a lot easier, right? If you exactly know, okay, that tank just shot me, is that, he's camping exactly in that position. If you know that without even seeing the tank, you're already doing a lot better. Blitz is a strategy game, which means the more you know about the game, the better you'll play. It's that simple. It's not just about point and click. However, good reaction time can also help you, as we'll see in one of the later games. But the main thing that you, essentially, to be good at Blitz is you have to know everything, or most things about Blitz. You know, what is that KPZ's reload, for example? What is his alpha damage? What is his gun depression? Which means, if you look at him, you can see, can he shoot you or not? You know your own tank, can he pen you or not? Stuff like that. And obviously you don't need to know everything, but to have a general idea of most things. The more you know, the better you will be. And that Object right there, he's like, hey, how about I charge into two vehicles at the same time? That's another thing you don't want to do. If you're in a disadvantage, you'd never want to charge. If you're in a 1v3, a 1v4, or whatever, you do not want to charge at the enemy when they're bunched up, right? You always want to single out one enemy, you fight that enemy, you win that 1v1, and then you move on to the next one. Because the second you start fighting two tanks at the same time, you have no chance, given they're somewhat have hit points and are somewhat competent. So always try to get 1v1s as often as possible, because then, if you're a good player, your chance of winning those 1v1s is very high anyway. And now it goes into a 1v4 right here with the IS-7. And 4005 doesn't pay attention, he doesn't care, he just YOLOs in, being a one-shot, and gets finished off very quickly there. Now, 500 HP, it's not really great. The Object is firing premium ammunition, but he screws up. And now it is a 1 versus 2 against the E5 and the Jagdpanzer E100, which is very, very difficult. And there you go, the E5 reveals his position before he gets spotted, so exactly knows he's in D. And Moo here, perfect reaction, spins around, goes right back. And now, unfortunately, the E5 has its... Wait, I'm just seeing, why the hell are you using a fire extinguisher? What the hell? I mean, the only tank that a fire extinguisher makes sense is an FE215B, because the fuel tank's right in the lower plate. Why? I mean, I would definitely use adrenaline here in this situation and not a fire extinguisher. And now, the E5 completely screws up right there, bounces twice off the IS-7. Again, that's the luck portion of high damage. If the enemy's dumb or does absolutely horrible mistakes, it makes it very easy to win. Normally, this is a game that is unwinnable. However, if with the right kind of skill and luck, you're gonna win it very easily. Now, this is unfortunately a supremacy battle, which is not great, so it adds another pointless variable to the battle. I will make a separate video on supremacy soon, so maybe. So, at this point, it's a 1v1. 117 HP, and that is not good at all, because the Jagdpanzer has very good HE rounds, and it can pretty much, despite the IS-7's very strong armor, can pretty much HE this thing in most places besides like the very front of the turret. Though the Jagdpanzer makes somewhat of a mistake here as he tries to run after the IS-7, because while the IS-7 might not be the most mobile heavy, if a Jagdpanzer gunner gets caught out, you're not going to have a great time. And he is in fact caught out. He is going the wrong way, and the perfect way for Mu here, and Mu misses the shot. Could have been aimed a bit better, but at this point you're charging forward, you're going straight at the Jagdpanzer and getting right behind him. And that's the problem with the something like a Jagdpanzer 100. If I would have been the Jagdpanzer at this point, I would have gone for C and B, you know, and let Mu rot in his little corner, basically, because, you know, the Jagdpanzer doesn't have to do anything. He already has one cap circle. He has the point advantage. All he has to do is protect C and B, and then he's good. But he decides to take the initiative. And again, you don't want to... If you're in a 1v1 situation, you just saw that that IS-7 took out 3 of your teammates. You want to be careful, right? And so the Jagdpanzer completely screwed himself here by just pushing forward. Obviously, it may be a move of confidence, right? Confidence is always great to have. However, you don't want to be overconfident. You want to know exactly what your abilities are. Because if you don't know, then exactly that happens. And Cow Says Mu ends up with 7,700 damage in an absolutely amazing game, aided by very much a lot of enemy incompetence. However, that does not reduce the achievement right here with an ace, a Radley Voltas, a Kolomanovs, pretty much all the good medals that you can get, except the Rizzy Nice Hero. Now, we go now with Dave in the IS-4. Now, this is the other one of the Russian heavy tanks. Now, both these vehicles are sort of very easy to play, somewhat hard to master, right? And they also do have that factor of, if the enemy's dumb, that adds to your armor, right? Like, for example, in a Leopard 1, you got no armor. If the enemy can't aim, they might still hit, and then we're still going to pen. But if you're like in an IS-4, or even in E100 or something like that, that's the strength of those vehicles. That if the enemy doesn't know what they're doing, doesn't know how to aim, doesn't know how to use their ammunition, if you don't know how to use your ammunition, I made a video about that very recently, so check it out as well on my channel. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well if you haven't. And if you want to support the channel, become a channel member. All that is in the down there. Yeah, shameless plug, I'm sorry. So now, his side is basically clear, and Dave here is just moving forward, taking the initiative, taking the map control. That's another important thing. If you have an advantage, you take the map control. Because the more of the map you control, the more you can move around, the more positions you can play, and the E75 is AFK. Now, the thing about AFK players is that if you can take them out uncontested, you definitely should, right? Because a AFK player is a very easy bait. You can do you get free damage, and if that AFK player would eventually wake up, you would have another problem to deal with. However, if you take out that AFK player, if you're otherwise unoccupied, then you won't have to deal with it later if he does wake up. So, ideally about AFK players, if you can deal with them, if you aren't needed anywhere else, and if there's no other tanks pressing you, take out the AFK, perfectly fine. Now, another equipment loadout fail here. I mean, it's the default loadout. Wargaming suggests it like this. I don't know why they do. Probably because it's the most expensive equipment, and that's how they sell more premium time. But I would not use 2 special consumables. Medkit and a multi-kit I would pretty much use on any tank unless you're in some kind of competitive setting where you can allow yourself to be a bit more aggressive. However, I would always go with a caution and use the multi-kit and the repair kit, because then if you lose a driver or something like that, if you get tracked, and after getting tracked you get set on fire, which happens, you have a lot more security there, and the bonus of getting the bit of speed boost and the bit of reload boost, I think in my opinion isn't worth losing that security of staying in the fight for longer, because, you know, if you only have the multi-kit, a lot of things can happen in 90 seconds, and I would definitely prefer to have some sort of security. Now, at this point, I would be like, okay, E75's AFK, he might not be for longer, I go for the E75, right? The T92 is already going for the E75 as well, so you can have 2 guns, like 4,500 DPM or more. I'm going that guy, he's dead in 20 seconds. The E100 is never going to have a chance to help out that E75, basically. However, Davey decides, I want to go aggressive, I want to push, which can make sense. Obviously, if you expect the T92 to take him out anyway, then you can do that. However, I would have just went for E75, take out the E75 quickly, and then focus on this full HP E100, because you don't know what kind of player the E100 is. Because a full HP player at the end of the battle is often meaning one of two things. Either a very good player or a very bad player. You know, because a very good player is very good at retaining their hit points for the most part, and a very bad player is going to sit in a corner somewhere and not be contested. And now, the D100 has taken out the T-92. I don't know how that even happened. All he had to do was essentially hide behind the E75, and nothing would have essentially happened. Now, essentially this can be somewhat of a cheated Kolobanos medal here, because it's a 1v2 rather than a 1v3. However, that Skoda is still a quite big problem, and it's really nice here. You know, he's looking at the Skoda. The E100 just fired, and the E100, he's not doing a great job, right? He was full HP when the fight started. Now he's on pretty much the same HP as Dave here, and yeah, he's achieved nothing. I don't know what the Skoda's trying to do here. Like, he's just trying to push in mindlessly, and of course Dave is gonna turn around and shoot the Skoda. Obviously, any smart person would. And now it's a 1v1 against the E100. And at this point again, the IS-4 has very good armor. The E100 is so desperate that he's firing HE rounds now. So you can clearly see that he's not having a great time. And obviously, the third armor of the IS-4 is very, very strong. So the best thing for the E100 to do right now is to disengage, to move back, and to shoot heat down into the front plate of the IS-4, because that's his best chance of getting penetration, right? His vehicle is higher than the IS-4. He could move back and then shoot some heat rounds into the 4, or he can try to penetrate the cupolas of the IS-4. However, they're very, very small. He doesn't do any of that, and he dies. And he only got off one shot, really. And the TVP pretty much did more damage there, and now it's just finishing off the E75. So this is a very good tank, and also absolutely amazing play here by Dave. Obviously, don't want to take away from that, because it's just an amazing play. Like, yo, but Ivanov just absolutely screwed himself. What a muppet that guy was. And yeah, that's why don't face hug an IS-4. That's the result of this battle, pretty much. And it's again, Kolobanos, Ace, Radley Walters, which is absolutely amazing. And now, we move on to the last battle right here, which is in the Grille 15 on Nube, which is a pretty bad map for a vehicle like the Grille. You don't have a lot of armor, you want to have a lot of range with a vehicle like this, right? So, you don't want to be on a map like this, and ideally, you don't really want to go into the city ever. You know, so this is kind of like a big questionable here. But if enemy heavies are going all the way over there, this position can be relatively useful if someone's trying to cross, someone's trying to take damage. So this position, perfectly fine if you can move out from it quickly and help your medium tanks, which is the important side pretty much in most cases. And the could have been aimed a bit better there, but I do that all the time as well. Just most of the time, I don't even go into the first person aiming, so I just third person aim, but it's not great, obviously. But at this point, I kind of hit that point of I don't have to achieve anything anymore. I know that no matter how much I goof around, I'll play Super Unicum anyway, somehow. So I just stop caring about my own advice, basically, which is not a great thing to do, obviously. But it just ends up happening, because then I'd rather talk to stream chat or something like that than try to do another 500 damage, because I just don't care. Now, we have Daggerman's right here, who definitely does care about playing well, because he's gonna do definitely quite well. So thank you all for sending in those absolutely amazing replays, and very, very nice. I have a very, very good playing community, and that is great. You know, you wanna encourage people to do well, because the better you do, the more you'll piss off the noobs, and maybe the more you inspire the bad players to get better as well. Because here's the thing, if you're bad at the game, that's perfectly fine. As long as you're willing to learn, as long as you know that you're not good, as long as you're trying to do your best to at least do average and carry your own weight. As long as you're doing that, that is absolutely perfectly fine. However, if you're not carrying your own weight, then that's not really that great, right? Because you're essentially reducing the enjoyment of other people by not being good, or not even being competitive in any way. If you do 500 average damage in tier 10, it's safe to say that some of your teammates are going to have a worse experience because of you. And that's just how it is. Now, very good move here. Not a very good shot, unfortunately. 1.6k damage after 3 minutes. Very long game here as well. I don't even know how I can do this, like just randomly talk and go on. Just, I don't know. I have an empty brain, but empty brain, big mouth, pretty much. So, yeah. Now, 3 versus 4, which is not always a great thing. The Skoda and the object are very low HP, so it is going to be very hard. And in a vehicle like the Grille, you don't want to be the one that has to carry, because you don't have a lot of armor. Everyone can HE you. And you don't have like a leopard mobility kind of thing where you can just run around everywhere and do whatever you want. So, you don't really have that either. You have the limitation of only a semi-traversable turret and not really amazing mobility. It's definitely better than a lot of other tanks, obviously, but because it has no armor, so it has a decent engine. But it's definitely not great mobility, especially 15 kilometers an hour reverse. And here comes the Badger, who again, it's going to very easily pen. And now, again, the Badger just shot. You want to move forward. Just saw that E3 just about perfectly, and then, you know, pen the Badger straight through the face with the heat. Now the Grille got nerfed, unfortunately, which is not great, right? I don't like seeing that, you know? Because if you have a paper tank, if you have a tank that has 0 armor, and you give that tank less alpha damage, you're essentially nerfing it. Why? Because you have to peak more. The less alpha damage you have, the more you have to peak. It's why, for example, these Carnarvon Action X is a significantly worse tank than a T-4E2, because you have to just peak twice as much, pretty much, while having not as much armor even. So it just makes it worse, because the more you have to peak, the more chances the enemy has to shoot you. Which means, if you have a paper tank, you ideally always want to prefer the higher alpha damage, right? Like a T-49 with a derp gun. Because with the higher alpha damage, you have to peak less. If you have to peak less, the enemy has less opportunity to shoot you. Simple, right? Now, nerfing the Grille's alpha damage by 40 is obviously not great. Now, absolutely amazing awareness right here. Awareness is the most important thing about Blitz. I've said it 100 times, thousands of times. The more you know of what's going on, the better you will be. If you see that E100, he might start capping. You move around here, boom. Now, 228 hit points is not good, especially on a Grille. If you had this on an IS-7, what you could do right now is set up on that wall and try and side scrape out, or even if you want to be really try hard, you're going to reverse side scrape to hide your front plate. And now I have no idea what they're doing as they're retreating. Their best move would be to stick together and essentially try and push one side, because they're the slower tanks. However, they're the sturdier tanks. Obviously, the Grille and the Skoda are faster. However, those two, they got the higher alpha damage gun. They can one-shot both of them, and they have the armor, essentially, and they have the hit points to take a shot. So if I would be them, I wouldn't just sit in one corner. I would go for it. Again, if you're in a 1vx situation, you want distance. So if you're in a XV1 situation, you want to close that distance. You don't want to give them any room. And the E100 reveals himself right there and just shoots into the wall. And it might have been HE even, and he just completely screws himself right there. And again, the guy doesn't know what he's doing. He's just, look at him. He's a clown. And again, if you know that guy just threw down that building, it's just incompetence from that E100. That if he wouldn't have driven through that, then Daggermans would have never known that the E100 is there. And then the E100 just fluffed his shot as well. All he had to do is take it. And then, slow as hell. See, reaction time. Reaction time is another very important thing. As I said it earlier, I still remember it. I'm doing the one take. There's no script. It's all in my brain. That's why it's so bad. But reaction time is also very important, because if you can just react a lot faster than the enemy, you're going to get a shot off. Well, they're still, huh? What happened? So, that's a great thing to have. And again, the E3, he ain't reacting. He doesn't even realize, like, ideally, you shoot a split second before the enemy has even peaked, because by the time the enemy then peaks, your shell arrives. However, we have now arrived at the end of this very long video, so thank you very much for watching. Hope you learned something. Hope you enjoyed some good games. And now this is going to go into a about 7-hour long-lasting upload for you to then enjoy. Now, thank you very much for watching. And as always, see you in the next one. Next sub replay is probably in about 2-3 weeks. Until then, take care.